In a recent debate hosted by the Whatever podcast on free will, we heard this claim.
Christians don't believe that to be true because it would mean that there's a contradiction in their logic that is there. They just don't want to categorize it, right?
The accusation is clear. Christians are supposedly closing our ears to some gotcha moment that allegedly shatters our worldview. The argument is that if God knows what you're going to do, then you don't really have a choice. But is this argument as airtight as she thinks it is? And is this really a contradiction in Christian logic? Or is the flaw somewhere else entirely? Let's break it down. Today, we're not just going to show that our argument is unconvincing. We're going to show that Christian philosophers reject this argument not because they're avoiding any logical contradiction, but because the argument itself actually relies on a well-known logical error. By the end of this video, you'll be able to point out and see for yourself as well. First, let's give a fair and charitable understanding of our argument. It's a well-known philosophical puzzle, as it were, and it basically goes as follows. If an all-knowing God knows with 100% certainty that tomorrow you will pick a red shirt over a blue shirt, then how could you freely choose a blue shirt? It seems like your history is already written. But here's where the conversation goes immediately off the rails. She's actually arguing against a position called theological determinism, which is the idea that God's knowledge causes our choices or forces our choices. But listen to what our opponent says.
You realize that I'm not a Calvinist, right?
I don't think
so. I don't believe in any sort of theological determinism.
He's making a vital distinction. He's not a determinist. He could be compatibilist or something else. But she's actually making a classic straw man by attacking a claim or a position that he explicitly denies holding. But let's ignore the straw man. Let's give her the benefit of doubt and build the strongest version of our argument possible. This is something known in philosophy as steel manning. We can break it down into formal logic. Premise number one, necessarily, if God knows that you're going to pick a red shirt, then you're going to pick a red shirt. This just is the definition of all knowing. Premise number two, God knows that you will pick red. Conclusion, her conclusion at least. Therefore, it is necessary that you pick red. You have no other choice. Now, this looks so powerful. It looks so logical, but it contains a fatal flaw. It contains a fallacy known as the modal fallacy. The fallacy is confusing what is true with what must be true. And I'm going to give y'all a simple analogy just to break it down. Premise number one, necessarily, if John is a bachelor, then he is unmarried. That's the definition of a bachelor, right? The connection is necessary. Premise number two, John is a bachelor. That's just a simple fact. So what's the right conclusion then? Well, the right conclusion is, therefore, John is unmarried. That's it. It would be a fallacy to conclude, therefore, John is necessarily unmarried. He's not. He could literally get married tomorrow. The necessity is in the definition, not the fact itself. So when we go back to Zina's argument, it's the same exact error. Her argument only proves that you will pick the red shirt. It does not prove that you have to pick the red shirt or you couldn't have picked the blue shirt. Her argument confuses the certainty of an outcome with the necessity of that outcome. Now let's go back to her original claim.
Christians don't believe that to be true because it would mean that there's a contradiction in their logic that is there. They just don't want to categorize it, right?
The Christian compatibilists are not rejecting her claim because they're afraid of some gotcha moment or some flaw or illogic in our own thinking, but actually because they've identified a flaw in her argument, that is the modal fallacy. The position is not, I believe in free will even though it's illogical. The position is your claim that there is no free will based on God knowing everything is faulty reasoning, specifically relying on the modal fallacy. Christians, we got to understand these tools so that we can deal with this stuff better, because we're going to hear it more and more now that everybody has a phone in their pocket and everybody has a podcast, myself included. It's not really a podcast, it's a YouTube channel, but you get the point. And it's really that simple. Thank you for listening.